taken a crack at the whole superhero thing before? Some of the most viewed videos on this channel, okay, actually all of them, are centered around Spider-Man, one of the best comic book characters ever put to the page. But unlike the way things are today, there was a time when the majority of superhero games out there were all based off blockbuster films. I think Arkham Asylum was what really started paving the way to ending that trend. It was released around the same time as The Dark Knight from what I can remember, but it had an original story and was more based off the comics and the animated series than it was on the films, but it definitely adopted Nolan's grittier and darker tone and in my eyes even cranked it up a notch. Superhero games based off movies didn't die off immediately after that, of course, but this final era for that type of game felt like it was led by a character that also led the charge into the trend of comic book movies seeing an all-time high. Iron Man arrived on the silver screen in 2008 and absolutely captivated audiences, but later that year he also saw a video game tie-in, as did the other flagship Avengers when their films hit theaters. These 5 games right here, developed by Sega, were the only video games based directly off the MCU movies without being a LEGO title or just taking a lot of influence from them, and with the reputation video game adaptations of movies had over the years, it really comes as no surprise, especially since Marvel movies would start to come out like twice a year after that. So how did this trend die? Well, let's take a look under the hood and find out together, shall we? Today's topic of discussion is Iron Man for the Xbox 360. Like I mentioned before, these games were all developed by Sega, which makes me forever disappointed that Iron Man doesn't have a Hatsune Miku armor or something, but at least we're going into this knowing that we're working with a team that has some experience. Oh wait, this was also them. Okay, yeah, let's curb that optimism then. In terms of plot, it's about what you would expect. Multi-billionaire Tony Stark has made a fortune building weapons, and after being kidnapped to make more weapons, he sees that his weapons are being used by bad people, and he doesn't like that, so he builds a suit to escape and then also blows up his own weapons, and decides to make more suits so he can find more weapons and destroy all the weapons. The word, weapons gets thrown around a lot in this game. The story is laid out through the use of some very low budget and very dated cutscenes. These look really bad, and a lot of it is because of these character models. I mean, just, ugh. It's, possible to scoop out your own eyeballs with a spoon, right? At least they sound decent enough. Part of the cast from the film returns to voice their respective characters here, but something I find really distracting is that Tony Stark sounds like Robert Downey Jr. in cutscenes, but during gameplay, I swear it's somebody else entirely. Like, if anything, it sounds like RDJ trying to talk without opening his mouth all the way. I cannot be the only one that thinks this sounds off.
Bring the afterburners online, Jarvis.
Actually, since I'm already complaining about this, I want to bring up Jarvis too. Not the voice so much, I mean it's clearly not Paul Bettany, but more the writing. In the movie, he has a little bit more sass to him, and it feels fitting considering he was created by someone like Stark, but it also adds a bit of charm to him as a companion.
The render is complete.
A little ostentatious, don't you think?
What was I thinking? You're usually so discreet.
Tell you what, throw a little hot rod red in there.
Yes, that should help you keep a low profile.
In the game though, he's just a dunce.
You know, Jarvis, by all rights, I should be dead.
Yes, sir.
I've been given a second chance, and look, I'm using it to kick some ass.
Do not understand ass-kicking backhand, sir.
I'm gonna give you some kind of personality, Jarvis.
Yeah, small nitpick, but I wanted to get it out there. It's not all high-flying and over-the-top antics from the get-go, though. The opening of the game naturally starts you off at the 10 rings base from the movie, and I think this is a pretty good way to kick things off. You're a bit more limited, since the Mark I suit you're using to escape the terrorists is missing flight and certain combat capabilities, but I can't help but feel like you're moving around a bit too quickly in this suit. Like, Tony is just rolling around at the speed of sound, which is really weird considering how heavy this equipment must be, and man, this camera shaking is not helping at all. Now, this is a review for the game made for the 7th generation of consoles, so we are talking about the Xbox 360 version today, but this is the only time in the video where I'm going to be talking about the PS2 version because while just about every other aspect of this particular version is worse than the next-gen counterpart, I do think it has a stronger opening. For one thing, they actually start you off inside the cave instead of outside of it, and you gotta bust your way out. There's actually a lot more thought put behind the level design here too, and it's way more interesting, but they also fix the weight issue, and Iron Man feels like he's moving at a speed closer to what you would expect. The best part of this whole thing is that when you bust your way out of the first metal door,
Sit tight, I'll get us out of here.
Dude, this is great. They actually play the Black Sabbath song as you're breaking out of the base, and once you make it outside, the music actually transitions to an action movie version of the song. Like, what? That's where my praise ends though, because the flight controls are worse, the gameplay is more tedious, and I didn't even feel like finishing this version of the game. You started off so well, but you lost your way, child. Now, I must return to your older brother. Once you make it past the opening mission, the game opens up a bit more as Tony begins his crusade on the world of weapons, and you get access to more advanced suits of armor, and these ones will grant you access to the best part of the game, flight. The flight controls are almost perfect here, with your hovering height all controlled by how far you press the left trigger button, giving you total agency over Iron Man's height at all times. From there, you can hold the button down in about halfway to maintain a hover, hold it in more to ascend, or let it go to descend. You can also press the left shoulder button to transition from a hover into flight, and everything here feels really natural and comfortable. It didn't take me long to start zipping around the area with ease, and honestly, it feels so great. Of course, a game like this isn't gonna be just all flight and nothing else. Why do you think Iron Man has fireworks packed into his hands? The game is set up across several different missions that will place you in these arena-like environments where you face off against terrorists who either have stark weaponry and are using it on innocent people, or are looking for power sources to fuel weapons, and your job is to come in there and blow stuff up. Tanks? Blow them up. Choppers? Blow them up. Ground troops? Punch them. And then blow them up. There's always a plot-based explanation behind who these people are and what they're doing with what, but for the most part, you're not actually gonna be doing anything other than flying around and shooting stuff. Iron Man has his repulsors, and they're okay at best. You don't get much of a feeling of power behind them, and honestly, the amount of damage that they do feels really minimal as you keep tapping away at the button until you see something that resembles destruction. You get rockets too, which help output damage a bit faster, but they also take a few moments to charge between uses. Finally, you have your Unibeam, which I think is supposed to deal a lot of damage, but the thing that's holding it back is that anything you would actually want to use this against has so much health that it feels like the Unibeam is doing practically nothing, or the opponent is just too fast to get hit by it, or charging the stupid attack leaves you wide open to get hit by the never-ending missiles that are constantly raining from the sky to fry you at a moment's notice.
Drop it.
Enemies are constantly hurtling these towards you, and you've got to keep your eyes glued to the radar to even notice them incoming a lot of the time. Mixing all of this together results in just about every mission feeling about the same. Chase down the orange icons that are laid over the current target, shoot them until they die, and move on to the next target, all the while dodging everywhere to keep from getting blasted out of the sky by a missile. As you can imagine, this starts off with each mission starting off with a cathartic feeling of raining hell on terrorist organizations, but the repetitive nature of the gameplay doesn't leave a lot to offer, and it gets old pretty fast. Sure, you can go out of your way to get up close to enemies and use melee tactics on them, which can be cool to see a few times, don't get me wrong, but it feels like a self-imposed method of breaking up the monotony, and that is never a good thing. The music gets old too, and fast, and it didn't help that my energy levels were already at rock bottom, so I went ahead and took advantage of the Xbox 360's music player and just loaded up the soundtrack from the movie, because it's actually good and has some oomph to it, and you'd be surprised at how much more fun a game can be if the music that you're listening to while playing it is decent. Now, there are some standout levels, particularly this one where you're chasing down an aircraft and fighting it in the sky, but aside from that, most missions are gonna end with a boss battle of some kind, and sadly, they usually amount to the same thing you do with everything else, which is just keeping your distance and shooting them until they stop moving. They try to shake things up every so often by throwing in side objectives into certain missions, like trying to keep certain structures from getting destroyed by enemy forces, or an American battleship being taken over by a cute reference to the controller and giving you the option to continue destroying the controller drones that keep popping up on the thing, leading to the US forces firing at you, or taking out the crew on board till leave nothing left to control. Which sounds kinda dark, but outside of some specific voice clips in the mission itself, the choice you make has no real impact. Like, what you do in the next mission isn't gonna be affected by what happens in this one or how anyone feels about you. The biggest impact these little side objectives are gonna have is how much of a bonus and reward currency you're awarded at the end of the mission. You could use this in-game money to spend on upgrades like boosting your weapons, speed, and stuff, and honestly, I barely ever paid any attention to these because the rate you unlock them all seems pretty linear anyway, and the benefits that they have during gameplay feel almost unnoticeable in a lot of ways. Kind of like the whole mechanic of diverting power to stuff like weapons, thrusters, and life support within the gameplay itself. Wow, this game really is just kind of boring. I mean, it's not actually like it lasts that long. Just 4 hours after starting the game, I was already at the end. I had already crippled the 10 rings, AIM, and this game's version of the Magia, and all that was left was to take down Tony's old partner, Obadiah Stane, because he wants to use the Iron Man technology to make profits. Well, Tony says nuts to that, and after a painfully long and incredibly tedious boss fight, complete with some really poorly written dialogue from our two rivals.
Now it's time for some witty back and forth banter. You go first! Okay, look, I'm not sure where to go with that!
We kill Jeff Bridges and the day is saved. Credits start rolling and, oh, now the game wants to play the Black Sabbath song. This is one of those games where I did have some legitimate fun playing it and might return to it in the future to play a mission or two, but probably not the whole game in its entirety. I mean, it has some good mindless action in it, but as a whole, it is missing any real draw. I mean, props for going the extra mile and adding unlockable costumes and stuff. The Extremis armor is definitely my favorite, but there's little to no variety in the game itself, and unfortunately, that makes Iron Man on the Xbox 360 one of the worst things a game can be. Boring. This wasn't the only Iron Man game made, but before we get to the sequel, there was another MCU movie and tie-in game that was released between the Iron Man films that I think demands our attention, so I hope you'll join me next time as we take a look at The Incredible Hulk. I've never heard anything good about this game. Send help. But until then, you can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Discord, whichever you prefer, links in the description, and of course, as always, spread the word, tell your friends, and until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. See you next mission. Hello, welcome to the end of the video. What is this? Did I upload another video like a week after another one? Yeah, you know what? I think I'm really liking this shorter form content. This is definitely something I want to upkeep for a little bit longer. I do think that the Metroid videos might, I think like the first couple will probably be around that length. They might get a little longer as we get into the more advanced games, but we'll kind of see how that goes. But yeah, no, I'm really happy with the way that the Treasure Planet PS1 review and this one have come together. I'm looking forward to seeing if I can keep that up, because I'm really enjoying this pace. And if I could keep uploading like weekly, I would be really, really happy about that. I gotta land on like what day of the week would be best to start uploading. I know during October for Metroid month, it's gonna be every Saturday, but I don't know if that's going to be the same for all the rest of my videos as well. We'll have to wait and see how all that shakes down. Anyway, yeah, let me know if any of you, especially the other content creators who kind of have experience with upload schedules and everything like that, let me know what day of the week is best for uploading, if there is one. And of course, I want to go ahead and give a special shout out to my top tier patrons, Patricia Marcoux and Christine Larkin. I love you guys and you help make this possible. And I am really getting back into enjoying this again. I'm having fun making videos again, and that just feels great. So, and I have you guys to thank for it, because without you, I wouldn't be able to do it. All right, on to recording footage and stuff for The Incredible Hulk. Hopefully we can do this again in another week. Man, I'm excited. All right, with all of that said, I have been Wayne. Iron Man on the PS2 sucks, and chocolate milk is a really good source of protein. All right, peace.